high school and graduation. And so we have been notifying now. This is my 16th year to notify. And for those of you who haven't seen them yet, these are the forms. That's probably backwards for you, I don't know. But it's just a really simple one-page form. If you like filling out forms like I did, I filled mine out when my son was 6 because it was so much fun to fill it out. And then I just kept it in my portfolio. I still have it from 2009, but I didn't bother sending it in because it wasn't legally required. But each year I download the form off the website and I save it into my notifications file on my hard drive. And then I fill in our parent information and our address and our last name, I guess, our email, a phone number, that kind of thing. And then I save it 6 times or 5 times, however many kids I have that year. I'm down to 5 from having 7 at the most. So and then I go in each of those forms and save one for each child. And so then I have a copy of it no matter what gets emailed wrong or whatever. I always have both my hard copy and my digital copy when I'm done. On the student information, you give their name, of course, and their birth date and whether they're male or female and the grade level that you expect them to, that you consider them to be that year. And I suggest that you do that equivalent to what they would be if they were in public school. I've had one that was working a year ahead, and so I registered her as that. And as time went on, I realized that meant I lost a year of her at being at home. She graduated this year at 17, and so I couldn't hold her back. It would look like she had failed when she never did, but I've lost that year with her. So register them for the year they would be in public school. And then as they approach high school, if that changes, then you can adjust. I also have a child who skipped a year of school and is graduating this coming year at the end of grade 11. So when he was going into grade 8, we registered him as grade 9, so he'd have all 4 years of high school registered with the province. And I did that under consultation with Alan at the time. And so that isn't a decision we made lightly, and it isn't a decision I'd make for every kid who is ahead, just because you have to balance whether or not they're ready to go to university early and all that kind of thing. But this guy is staying home and he's going to work with Dad on the farm. So it was an easy decision. He's not leaving the house right away. And this way it freed him to finish school in time to do what he loves to do, that works. So, but anyway, that's looking way far ahead if you've got little ones. Anyway, going back to how I notify. First, I'll talk about early elementary, because for me, that's quite a bit different than once they get into the middle school years. For language arts, we start around age 6 doing a formal phonics program, learning to read. And so I put that down first. That's my most important part of my language arts for me. I want to get those skills there. So I write down what phonics program I've chosen. And then I list anything else that we might be using. So that might be workbooks to work on manuscript. It might be to work on cursive, because most of my kids have learned cursive before they've learned manuscript formally. And then if they are going to finish a phonics program in that year, because they're already 7 before we report, I list what books we're planning to do next. Our curriculum has a set of what they call emerging readers. So I write down that we're doing Heart of Dakota's emerging readers. And if Alan ever wanted to know what that meant, he'd have to call me, but he's been with me long enough that he knows what HOD means on my reports. So, and then I also add various copy work. And then I write spelling and grammar as happens naturally. We don't use a formal spelling program. We don't use a formal grammar program until they're 9 or 10. And so that's acceptable. If you have a program that you're using, go ahead and write that down. But also remember that a lot of the early years can be learned through play and through conversation and natural life learning at home and as you go out about your day with your kids. So that's early years language arts. For math, we also don't use a curriculum for that. So I wrote down life skills math based on need and interest. We play board games, we use workbooks for certain things, life experiences. So patterns and counting and colors and shapes and the time and money and all those kinds of things we cover just through life learning and through our daily interactions and games and that kind of thing. I also write down, Matthew C has a skip counting CD, so we play that sometimes. I write that down as well. And then computer games are often used for fun times, but they teach math skills, so I add that on that list as well. We have used Matthew C in the past. teaching textbooks doesn't start till grade 3, but we use that for the older kids. Just write down whatever program you're using, as well as all those extras, because they really show that you're supplementing and using everything that at your disposal to help them learn what they need to learn. And then for science and social studies, again, I have used Donna Ward's social studies program. So Canada, My Country is for grades 1 to 3, and she has various different ones, one about natives long ago, one about Courage and Conquest is about wars and that kind of thing that Canada's been involved in. And the French versus English during settlement and that kind of stuff. We've used bits and pieces of all of those. But as my kids got older, I had so many that needed so much of my time in the upper years that my younger kids have gotten less and less formal instruction. So right now, their science is interest-led studies, books, nature, TV shows, and documentaries. If they have an area of interest, we might do a unit study. You can write that down. And if you're using a formal program, again, put that down first so they know where your basis is, and then you branch out from there. But don't forget to add all those extra things that I don't know if we'll use them or not, but I'll write it down because it's something I've thought of, we might touch on. And then as you get to your reports, you can be more clear about, okay, we did use this, or we decided to drop that. And then for social studies, this last year was different for us. We did a Canada focus. I got lots of kids' books about Canada, about maple sugaring, about the various different areas of the country. There's a lot of ABC books that cover Canada. So that was our focus. And then I also added a continuing awareness of community roles, volunteering, and health regarding the flooding that was in Minnedosa last summer in 2020, as well as COVID-19, because that's on everybody's radar, no matter how old they are. So that was a big part of a lot of the things we talked about as a family and with my younger years kids this year. And then there's a section for other. So for the little kids, anything else they're involved in, swimming lessons, our curriculum that I do follow later on has Bible. So I said that we were hoping to cover Bible with the little ones. If you have them in baseball or anything like that. And then one thing that is on some people's radar at this age is whether you have learning disabilities, that kind of thing. Feel free to note those on there so that the liaisons know what you're dealing with at home. We had to put a note on for the first time last year that 2 of our kids who are still in school were recently diagnosed with hearing loss. And so that affects what they can learn, even though we are so blessed that they had both learned to speak and to read before that, it still affects what they are able to process and take in each day. So that's something that, even though it's sort of medical, it's something that affects their education. So I included that as well. And then for us, it changes as they go into grade 4. And that's when I choose to use a formal curriculum for all subjects. And so then it actually is quite a lot easier to fill out the forms. I put the name of the curriculum and the level that we're using, and then add all those extras. Am I using a specific set of readers for their reading? Are we going to be discussing a certain thing? In high school, I also add in all the electives that they may be doing that year. So for my one that was in grade 12 last year, she not only had a full credit in world history, but she had a half credit in art history and a half in art appreciation as well. She was taking a course at ACC, so I put that down. She was taking ASL, sign language. She also had a half credit of health. And then down in the other, I also mentioned that when they're on a hockey team or if they're in 4-H, that helps with oral speaking and listening skills, and as well as like all their research and stuff that they do for their projects and their public speaking. I don't think if there's a whole lot more I need to mention. Sometimes their history is an actual course, and sometimes it's just a topic that I put down. I have the bonus of it that we are following a specific curriculum, but if you're going to use unit studies, you can put unit studies and then list some of the topics you hope to cover that year, and then just update it in January or June with what you have completed in the year. I don't know if you have any more questions, but that's basically an overview of how I do it. Once I'm done putting all that information in each child's form, then I print them all off and I keep a hard copy every year. I didn't just print these off for the presentation. I keep a hard copy. I have all 16 years right here. And I love being able to go back through those. In January, when I do the reports, I get out my September forms and lay them out in front of me. So I said, okay, what did I say I was going to do? And then comment on that. And it's just really good to look back through when you have a question about what year did we do that and that kind of thing. And then just one other quick comment for those of you who are new to homeschooling and haven't and are wondering about high school. Last year, I sent in all of our notifications and all that kind of thing. And then we had a university that requested official transcripts and official diploma. Well, of course, we don't get a diploma, and our transcripts are ones that I've made, but I just asked Alan to stamp them. And so I've circled in color because we don't have a color copier, what colors the stamps actually were, but Alan marked that they were accepted and received and inputted into their system, and both on all my notification forms as well as on her transcript. And that's what I sent to BU, and that's what she was accepted on. And so documentation is not difficult, even in high school. So it can be done. And so, yeah, it's just one page for each student, and I can do them all 6 or 7 that I've had in the past few years in just one afternoon or less. So yeah, that's everything, Gerald. You're muted.
Yes, I am muted. Larissa, thank you for that. If you have questions, we'll have a question and answer time at the end of our session this evening. So, but what I would say is that if you have questions throughout the evening, whether that's for Larissa or for others, feel free to put them into the chat. And I see that there's been some of that happening already. Peter Andres, in particular, from Manitoba Education, is a master at answering questions and posting information. So, Peter, thank you for that. And but just put your questions in there, and Larissa can respond as well as others. But our next section of this evening is I'd like to welcome our homeschool liaison staff from Manitoba Education, Ellen Schrader, Michelle Marchandon, Jasmine Reimer, and Peter Andres. Just want to welcome all of you to our session and appreciate the participation, the resources that you bring, and the cooperation and the partnership that we have with you. So thank you for that. And I'm not sure who's going to start. Ellen, are you going to kick it off, or?
For sure, Gerald. Thank you very much. Gerald, do I have permission to share my screen?
Yep, go ahead and go ahead and do that, Ellen.
Okay, alrighty. I will make sure. I'll just make sure I nab the right screen here. I think we've got it. I think I've got it right now. Whoops, nope, disappeared. It was there and it disappeared, and I okay, I just guess I'll have to move this over or move this down, because
a lot of times it's hiding behind something.
Yes. Okay, so are you seeing a screen that says homeschooling student notification form?
We're seeing your pictures behind you that say family and memories.
Oh, family and memories. My pictures behind. Oh.
No, we don't see it. We don't see your presentation yet, Ellen.
Oh, you don't see the
No.
You're not seeing the presentation?
No.
Well, what happened to it? That's weird. Why is it not? Oh, here, hang on. Now.
There you go.
How's that?
Now
Yeah, perfect.
Now we've
Is that working?
That
Okay.
works. Yeah.
Now we're cooking. Yeah, sorry about that. I apologize, Gerald. We use Teams at work all the time, and I use Zoom infrequently, and then I forget some of the little steps for Zoom that I need to do.
They move the buttons.
Yeah, and I'm too old to learn the new ones quickly. So that's
You're doing fine, Alan. Go for it.
all right. So thank you very much, Gerald and MACHS, for giving Michelle, Jasmine, Peter, and myself a chance to meet with you tonight. Presenting this evening will be Michelle Marchandon, who is our lead liaison for homeschooling, and presenting with her is Jasmine Reimer, one of the liaison colleagues in our office. And as you can see, Peter is very busy within the chat. He excels at that. And I asked Peter if he'd be willing to again lend his expertise to that. And he was very gracious in saying yes. And so by and large, my job is going to be to move the slide deck along. So we each have something to do. Michelle and Jasmine will be commenting by and large on the slide deck. There may be times when I may jump in very briefly, but likely not that often. So just going to the second slide, as I had just indicated, there are 4 liaison officers in the Independent and International Education Unit of Manitoba Education that are dedicated in large part, with the exception of Peter, who has another significant job within our unit and is given to us on a part-time basis to assist with the homeschooling load. And so there's Michelle, myself, Jasmine, and Peter that work to support families and help them meet all of the requirements that are outlined in the Public Schools Act. Our jobs specifically are really to ensure we determine equivalency as per Section 262B of the Public Schools Act. The public school ends up being the reference point for equivalency in regards to this section of the Act. And in part, that's why homeschool liaisons communicate with families if we have questions about program outlines or reports. We're here to reassure you that the liaisons are interested in supporting and working with families to ensure success in your meeting equivalency. And equivalency does not mean the same as or just like. It means developing skills and aptitudes that are consistent with what would be developed in public school classrooms. And really the content becomes the vehicle. It's not the sacred cow, so to speak, that we insist that families follow. And that's why families with a wide variety of programs are considered to be providing an equivalent education. For this year, which is different than last year, the 4 of us are assigned families from specific school divisions and are happy to help those families in particular, but any family that phones and connects with the liaison won't be told, well, you got to wait till so-and-so is back. We will all help however we can, you know, so don't ever think that when you call the office and one of us isn't in and you need help like right now, that we won't help you. We certainly will help you. If you've been working with a specific liaison and you do want to connect with that person and you can wait, you know, a day or so if they're out of the office for whatever reason, they'll be very, very happy to reconnect with you. So it's a bit of a change last year with the huge number of homeschooling students and families that we experienced because of COVID. The regular organizational piece around us being assigned specific families from school divisions, that had to be put aside.
Alan, I just wanted maybe to add before we go to this slide, I just wanted to add that all the homeschool liaisons are educators or have an education background specifically, which is obviously then for us, I think a vocation and a passion. And so we're definitely interested in education. And specifically, I just wanted to mention that my background is specifically also in homeschooling, where I did homeschool both my children for K to 12.
And it is a fascinating story if you can have Michelle tell that story sometime, because it speaks to the competence of homeschooling and the results it can garner.
All right. Hi, everyone. It's so great to be here. Today, we're going to just dive in about the legislation surrounding the student notification forms and notifying as a homeschooling student and family. So in the Public Schools Act, section 260.1, it's a notification to the minister. So the parent or guardian of a child who is a pupil in a homeschool shall, in a form approved by the minister, notify the minister of the establishment of the homeschool. So this means that a homeschooling family must provide a student notification form for each child annually using the approved homeschooling notification form. And the updated forms can always be found on the homeschooling website.
Yeah, and I think, Gerald, you mentioned this already, so I'll just reiterate that with regards to the notification requirement, if you're returning homeschooling families, so you did homeschool last year and you're coming back this year and continuing to homeschool, the deadline for or the date in which to submit that form, that notification form for each student, is September 1st. And if this is your first time homeschooling, you're brand new, you're just starting, and you'll be starting, say, this fall, maybe right at the beginning of September, then the requirement is to submit your student notification form within 30 days from starting your homeschool. So if you're starting at the beginning of September, you might have until the beginning of October to prepare and submit those forms. And just note that the liaisons are definitely available to help with any questions you might have around the forms.
And just again, a reminder to parents that you are very welcome to add additional information on additional sheets if when you are providing that notification information, you run out of room on the form, and we'll talk a little more about that later.
All right, so the purpose of the notification form. The homeschooling student notification form, or an SNF, is the official educational planning document for each homeschool child and is filed in the homeschooling office. The SNF is certified by a homeschool liaison officer who confirms the child is currently receiving a standard of education at home that's equivalent to that provided in a public school. And that's right out of the Public Schools Act, section 262B. So all forms not only meets the legislative requirements, but it's also very beneficial to students as it provides a really clear and concise record of information that is archived with the province for 50 years. So families at any time can access their homeschooling records in the future. And these records may be used when the student re-enrolls in a school or applies to a post-secondary institution. More complete information also allows for a better determination of equivalency.
So program outline requirements, which you will notice on the form. As Larissa pointed out, she was talking about the different subject areas in which she was planning the programming. And so the 4 required or mandated subject areas are language arts, mathematics, science, and social studies. So that would be for each child. And as Larissa was pointing out, as you're planning your program, as a parent, you're going to want to consider the topics, the subject area, like the themes, how you want to approach the learning, and also which resources you will use to complement the learning. So it's very beneficial to include the resources that you are looking at using. And some families use more like paper-based, like books, or even order in like a commercial homeschooling program, like a very structured program, formal program like CLE or ACE, sorry, I don't know where that came from. ACE, Becca, that's another popular one. And Then other parents really enjoy electronic resources. So they might go on websites, find online resources. They might even find some for purchase. A lot of them are available at no cost. So families are doing a fair bit of research, I think, when choosing their resources and including them in their program outline. And as Larissa mentioned, you might start thinking this is a good resource and I want to use it. But maybe later on you realize like you didn't even touch it. It never came into play with regards to your programming. You would just kind of adjust that in your January progress report at that time. So, we ask for families to consider their topics of study and even things like planned field trips or anything that complements the student learning be part of your programming. Some families ask about less formal approach to education, more child-led programming, and I know Larissa did address that as well. And that's definitely a great homeschooling philosophy. And you would simply indicate on the SNF the type of topics that interest the student and how you're working towards the learning, and again, which resources will complement that. We have had in the past families submit in their programming simply stating, child-led or student-led learning as their programming. That's not really enough information for us to determine equivalency. So in that case, you might get a phone call or an email from a liaison for clarification and a little bit more information. One thing of note that came up a lot last year, especially during COVID and the influx of homeschooling students, where a lot of families were choosing as their one and only resource for all 4 subject areas as the complete Canadian curriculum. So this is something that it's a workbook style, I'll call it resource that you can pick up at Costco. I think that was the most popular place I've seen it. And it is not a very robust resource. So it's great if you want to use it as one of many resources, but to say we've got it covered, all of our 4 subject areas in the complete Canadian curriculum will not be sufficient with regards to resources and a program outline. So then you would again be in touch with the liaison and discussing a little bit more how you can continue to build your program. Just a small note, even in the title of that resource, education is actually a provincial, it's under provincial jurisdiction. So what that means is that every province or territory organizes their, education and curriculum. So there is no such thing as a Canadian curriculum, first of all. And so there wouldn't be a complete Canadian curriculum either. So just kind of being aware, there is Manitoba curriculum. If ever a family wanted to use that as a guideline and pick up some information from, what is a grade 5 student in his, in science cover in Manitoba, that you might be able to research and find. So just kind of bear in mind that there is no complete Canadian curriculum in Canada. So yeah, just remembering that that's a possibility as a workbook or one resource of many. I think the next slide, Alan, goes to just additional topics. So under other, which Larissa also talked about, and there's different, here there's a few options that you can include under other, but there's certainly many more options. There's all kinds of opportunities for students and for children's learning that you can include here. And it just helps inform, I think, a very, or it speaks to a well-rounded sort of learning environment and education within the family. So we certainly encourage it, but that just note that that section is not actually mandated. And some families do choose to leave it blank. Usually, as you sort of are considering more the high school years and getting into the high school years, we do see the section under other a little bit more robust, and families considering those educational opportunities that like volunteering and maybe some kind of work experience, things that can really complement a student at the high school level and in their learning, and also as they consider possibly post-secondary choices, what might be needed and things like that. Larissa also mentioned that sometimes some students do even some studying within a high school or even a college setting for a course. That can be brought into the other as well. So there's a lot of possibility, but just kind of bear in mind that there's not a lot of room on the form for other, and usually we see attached and an attached form.
All right, so where do you find this form? You can find this fillable homeschooling student notification form, some short helpful information videos, and some guideline documents and sample forms by visiting the notification package web page. Now, I'm going to ask Peter if he can put this link into the chat for families to visit. So this is where you'll find our most updated forms. We have edited the form so that it has about 5 lines per subject. Now, some families may find that they need to include more information than the 5 allotted lines, so feel free to attach some additional documentation in order to better express your program outline for that year. Those additional documents can always be attached as an email. You can mail it in, or you can fax it if you so choose. We do encourage families to watch the short 5-minute videos to help you and to prepare you for filling out those student notification forms. There's also a guideline document on there that just really walks you through step by step on what needs to be filled out and at what time. So the student notification form samples are available to help guide you in the process. And we just really want to commend the parents and the families who have referred to the student notification form samples in preparing to submit their new SNFs for this school year. The quality of the program outlines have greatly reflected this review. So thank you, families, if you're watching us today. Parents are also encouraged to view the video and review the samples and the guidelines prior to contacting the homeschooling office for additional questions. However, you are always welcome at any time to contact the homeschooling office, and we will be more than happy to answer any of your questions or to walk you through the process as well. So on this slide, on slide 9, this is just a visual representation of where you can find that notification package web page. So when you go to our website, it will be actually on the left-hand side of your screen. It's going to be a get started box and it's gray. And you'll notice on the underline here that it says notification package. And that's where you're going to find all the forms, all the videos, the samples, all that information will be right there.
So here's just an image of one of the guideline documents that we talked about. So this one specifically about program outline. We have like these 2-pager guidelines on the website, and they're really quite easy to reference and follow to give you an idea of like sort of what you need to do. They reflect what the little 5-minute videos that we've prepared also explain. So the guideline documents and the videos that are posted on our website complement each other and are there to help any family just getting started, or any family just kind of refreshing their knowledge on notification and reporting. There's also on this page, actually, I see that there's like a little reference to our resource. We have like a resource web page for homeschooling. Unfortunately, it's needing some pretty important updates. And there's been a lot of changes in education recently and things have moved fast. But anyway, we're going to be updating that page. But in the meantime, what we've prepared as liaisons is this, it's like a 4-page PDF that we've called Homeschooling Resource Considerations. So if ever a family would like access to this information, these PDFs, each title is a link that takes you to that information. The first page is mostly Manitoba type resources from Manitoba Education or familiar publishers in education. But the second page and going forward, second, third, fourth page are more like non-Manitoba resources that are more familiar and well used by homeschooling families. And I'm sure some of you might recognize some of these resources listed here. And so this is not an exhaustive list. This is just to get families going and started and thinking about, where do I find resources? What does that look like? What does that mean? These are some good options. And we added the Canadian flag at the end of some of them just to indicate Canadian content if they were made in Canada, because obviously, for example, something like social studies, we definitely encourage Canadian content and studying our history. So this document, if you would like it to receive it, just email us. Any of the liaisons can definitely attach it in an email and send it your way. Or I don't know, Gerald, if you'd be interested in us sending you the document as well. And if that's something you would consider making available to families in MACHS.
We would welcome that.
Okay, fantastic. So we'll make sure to send that your way. Our last page on this, it's not, we don't have a picture of it, but does touch on some of the potential supports that families might want to tap into if they've noticed a student with any kind of needs that have been identified.
And I can just, if I could just add here, if you have a student with additional learning needs, don't hesitate to talk to us, because there may be some ideas we could share with you in regards to resources or other community sources of support, that kind of thing. So do reach out because we'll do whatever we can to ensure that you're going to be successful in your homeschool.
So this is what the student notification form looks like for this current school year. It is updated every year, so please refer to our website for those updated forms. It's kind of small right now on your screen maybe, but all of the required information is there and should be filled out. And like Michelle has said, that if a liaison does need to seek clarification, we will reach out to you either by phone or by email. I guess I also just want to point out on that form as well, before Alan goes to the next slide, that signature at the bottom of the page. Sometimes it works with a digital signature if you're filling it out on your computer, and sometimes it does not. So just be mindful of that. If you did do a digital signature and we contact you for a signature, it just may not have been, it may have just not have saved properly, or it was cut off. So no worries, but just make sure that it is signed at some point before submitting it. All right, so using the fillable form. So these are some important steps to note if you're wanting to fill this form out on your computer. So your first step is going to be ensuring that you have the most recent version of Adobe Reader on your computer. This Adobe Reader, I believe, is free. So please make sure that you download it onto your computer. Once that Adobe Reader is downloaded on your computer, then you can go to the student notification form and download a blank copy to your computer and save it. After it's saved, please open up the form using Adobe Reader to begin filling it out. This is very important because otherwise, if you submit it, we may not be able to read it. So please remember also that before you send it to us, that you save it as well before sending it as an attachment to the homeschooling office. Sometimes we get forms that are blank, and it's not because families submitted blank forms, it's because it just wasn't saved correctly, or it was saved in a different PDF reader, such as in Chrome or Edge or Safari or Firefox. Any of those browsing platforms do have their own readers. And sometimes if it's filled out on those other browsers, in those different PDF readers, we can't see what was filled out. So that's why it's really important that you download the free Adobe Reader on your computer and fill out the form using that. And just to keep in mind as well, our forms online, they are fillable on a computer or desktop. They're not mobile friendly. So we definitely recommend that you fill it out on a computer.
So in the process of completing the form, and Larissa did mention already that, you know, the top half of the form is more like your parent and student information. And just a note that the expectation is that the parent or guardian is available during the school day to provide instruction to their students. There is a section at the top of this form where the parent or guardian may designate a main instructor, and we do see that sometimes with a grandparent, for example, who is someone other than the parent or guardian. However, instructional time is expected to take place during the school day in order to meet equivalency. And I mention this simply because, especially with last year, with the increased families, I guess, homeschooling due to COVID, there were a lot of working parents, full-time working parents that wanted to homeschool, and they wanted to do it only either evening or weekends. And that didn't really meet equivalency, especially in the best interest of the student, whose learning is very important to do learning, not at 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock at night, you know, for a grade 3 student, but rather in daytime hours. So just something to bear in mind. All fields on the student notification form must be completed for each form and each student, and including a signature. And we just want to highlight especially the field of your personal phone number, so that a homeschool liaison may contact you if needed. The email is optional, so just kind of note that if you don't have an email, that's okay. One question we get a lot is families see the information, the student information that includes the MET or MET number as its reference. A lot of families don't know what this means or what it is. It's a 9-digit Manitoba education and training number that all students in the province are assigned. It's usually sent to you in your confirmation of notification letters. So if you keep your letters that you receive confirming homeschooling, you will notice your student's MET number is on that letter. If you can't locate that letter for some reason, or it's your first year homeschooling, you don't know this number, it's not a problem. Don't worry about it. You may leave that piece blank, and do not, you know, it's not necessary to contact the homeschooling office to obtain this number. Our admin support staff will fill it in for you if they receive it blank, and then they'll include that number for you in your confirmation letter. If you're faxing a form, we still do accept forms by fax. Please note that blue and black ink are best. Any colored ink or pencil sometimes just does not fax well, and then we can't read the form. So just bear that in mind. And some families like to take a picture of their form and then email it, and that works as long as it's a very clear picture and we can print it, and that kind of thing. So we do accept all ways of submitting the form. Fairly open to it. Just bear in mind that it's most important that it's legible.
And some families will also take a picture of it, and they'll then call the office and say, I'm not sure how to get it to you. I don't use email. We all have government issued cell phones, and I've had many families text message their forms to me, and then I handle them on our end. as far as that goes. So we'll do whatever we can to help you get that form to us.
So it's really important that when we're talking about the program outline and when completing the SNF, parents are responsible for the researching, choosing, and acquiring of the materials and resources that are going to support each child's learning program in each subject area. There are varieties of different kinds of print and online resources available to support homeschooling programs. And like Michelle has mentioned in our previous slides, we do have a 4-page document that we would love to share with you, and may even be posted on the MACHS platform as well.
I guess I just wanted to mention with what Jasmine just discussed, that the reason I guess we highlight that the parents are responsible for researching, choosing, and acquiring is because we do get families that call and ask that we send them the package, the homeschool package. There is no homeschool package. We're there to support and help families, but the choice is always the families with regards to the educational programming. So just kind of being aware that we don't have a bag of books or pre-packaged, kit that we can send you. Just to continue on the program outline, when you are developing, consider how you're setting your learning goals, consider your child's interests, their skills, their abilities, all that is factored into your planning, and just consider all different possibility of resources in order to just really encourage student engagement in their learning. So choose what works for your student. And if it doesn't work, change it. That would be my biggest, comment.
Yeah, as I've often said, if the horse is dying, dismount. Don't ride it into the ground. If you need to change programming, it's not an admission that you've done something wrong. Sometimes you'll choose a program with the best of intentions. It just doesn't work out because your child doesn't gel with it. You're not quite as excited about using it as you thought you might be. That's fine. That's not a problem. So don't be afraid to make a change if you need to.
Our first curriculum lasted an entire month, and it had to go, or my relationship with my son was going to go. So
That can happen, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And that's quite
So-
fine to make a change.
So resources, having that wide variety of resources is really important because it allows that flexibility. If something doesn't work, you can try something else and you've already planned for that. So we are in the process of updating our resources section on the homeschool website. However, in the meantime, like we previously mentioned, on the notification page, web page, we do encourage families to take a look at those short little videos that are going to be really helpful in filling out the student notification forms, as well as those guidelines and those sample forms as well. We have some sample forms for 3 different grade levels, just to kind of give you an idea of what could be written down. So I really want to encourage you to take the time to look and spend some time cruising through that portion of the website, or to contact a liaison. And again, we will also help and provide that 4-page document if you want.
So blended instruction, this was definitely popular pre-COVID for some families, but I'll talk about it, but I don't know that it'll be very, how possible it will be this year. So pre-COVID, and Larissa actually talked about that with her daughter taking, say, a course at ACC. Some families who homeschool can work with local or catchment area schools and look for their child to maybe take a course or 2 within that institution. Some families, we're maybe plugging into maybe band or physical education or something like that. And that is always, just so you know, at the discretion of a school principal. Yeah, so that would mean having a conversation with your local school principal and seeing if this is something that's possible and would work with them. The thing is that due to COVID and all of the different restrictions that schools are subject to right now, this is much more difficult, and I'm not sure how possible it would be at this time. But we're hoping one day that this will just be more possible in the future. But just bear in mind that if you do find a way to blend some learning with an institution or a local school, just to continue to notify for homeschooling, that's still required and indicated on your notification form.
Okay, so when it comes to homeschooling as a separated or divorced family, there is a little bit of a difference here. So families who homeschool where the parents do not cohabitate must provide both parents' signatures on the student notification form when both parents have custodial rights. However, if one parent has a Court of Queen's Bench order awarding that final educational decision-making, a copy of the court order must be provided. So that is a very vital piece of information. If both parents, however, have custodial rights, but one parent is not in agreement to homeschool, then the student must be enrolled in a school. If a parent fails to disclose the separation or a divorce when notifying, and a disagreement happens between the two custodial parents and it's expressed in writing, then the student notification form and the approval may be withdrawn and the child will need to return to school. So yeah, it's very important to, if this is you, that 2 signatures are provided or a Court of Queen's Bench order is provided.
As mentioned earlier, as the school year evolves, things can change, and that's fine. Just indicate that in your progress report. And some families don't like to wait till January. That's the first progress report is in January. So they feel that that's a long time, maybe because they're changing in October their program or their resource. So they do call or email our office, speak with the liaison, just ask to have their family file updated, which is fine too. We're happy to do that. Just continue looking for whatever is considered your best resources for your student throughout the school year, and anything that you add or subtract from your programming, indicate it in your progress reports. This happens all the time in a classroom setting with teachers, and so of course we expect that it will be the same with families. So yeah, just continue. It's a very organic process, education, and so we want to honor that.
So when completing the documentation, documents such as a student notification form or even additional Word documents that you want to attach, you are more than welcome to do so, because we do recognize that our forms have limited space, and if you want more space, you may always attach that additional document. It's always welcome. We will keep it in your family file, so it's welcome at any time throughout the school year.
And really, when you look at it, all of the documentation that you supply is not for Michelle, Jasmine's, my, or Peter's benefit. It is for your child or children's benefit. That record that you create and that we hold for you in the family file is there for 50 years. And so I've had situations where families had a house fire. They've lost all of their homeschooling documents. Well, I could replace them all with the copies that we had. So, it's really important that you look at the documentation as not satisfying the homeschooling office, but really developing that long record for each of your students that will be something that will aid them down the road in terms of whatever other educational endeavors that they may want to step into. And as Jasmine said, anytime you send us anything, we put it in your family file. Nothing is ever thrown away that we receive from your family. Nothing. It's all stored and saved. So we've got a lot of paper around, and we hope we never have a fire. That's all I can say.
So there are some common questions that we come across from homeschooling families, and we just kind of listed the 5 most common ones. However, it's not limited to just these questions. We recognize that there are going to be a lot more. So again, just want to remind you of that chat box. If you do have questions and you don't see them here, we haven't addressed them, please do go ahead and type them into that chat box, and either one of us or Peter will be able to address that. So the first question that is quite common is, what about a struggling learner? And Larissa did a great job of introducing this, because it's okay to indicate that your child is struggling. It's okay to indicate that maybe they have a learning disability or a learning need. As a parent, your task is to determine how best to program for those areas of difficulty. So a conversation with the liaison may help you and assist you with that. Liaisons, we do not judge the parent, we don't judge the student, because the student is struggling. We recognize that, and we want to help that student succeed. We want them to be successful. So that is our main goal with helping you. Some parents indicate that they are working at a different grade level, in different areas or different subjects, and that's okay too. Just indicate that on your student notification form. And again, if a liaison officer contacts you, it's just because we're just seeking more clarification, and we just want to know how we can best help and support you.
Another common question is, what about special needs? So learners with special needs. And yeah, in that case, sometimes parents are faced with the task and are encouraged to modify programming, because by modifying the programming, they best meet the student's needs. It's really important to offer your student authentic and appropriate learning, and we recognize that. So often we do get calls from parents because they sometimes struggle with modified programming or how to approach it, and they might have been in the public school already, and some of these needs have been identified. Typically in a school, if that's the case, they might prepare what's called an individualized education plan or IEP. So some families actually start homeschooling. They've already had a bit of a history in the public school, and they have an IEP. And if that's the case, they may share that with the liaison. That helps the liaison gain better understanding of the student needs, and also maybe how we can better assist parents with options and supports available to them. So that modification is very important. I think it's very important for the student. And we like to ensure that we support parents faced with that challenge and with working with their student.
Mm-hmm. So for the next question, number 3, what about using a semestered approach? At the K-8 level, liaisons, we recommend that mathematics and language arts be studied throughout the year, simply because there are foundational skills and knowledge that at those lower grade levels are really vital to continue learning and practicing, so that it's not lost for the next school year. When it comes to science and social studies, however, you may do that in a semester approach. For example, science could be studied in the first half of the semester, which would be September until January, and then social studies could be studied in second semester, which would be from February until June. If you decide to do that, please just indicate it on your student notification form that is your plan, and also in your January progress reports and June progress report. When it comes to high school, families who choose to semesterize, again, because they're a little older, the students, is quite common, especially in a public school setting, that you have your 4 subjects split up between the 2 semesters. And you can definitely do that as well. Again, if you're taking that semester approach, just indicate it on your student notification form. Again, it's not just for our benefit, it's also for your benefit as well, in order to maintain that detailed documentation for your own records.
We have the question, what about homeschooling in high school? And definitely homeschooling at the high school level is an option in Manitoba. You have all the same requirements that you would have done from the K to 8 age group. So that means the same notification form, the same 4 subject areas to cover, the same progress reports in January and June. So that part remains the same for grade 9s to 12. And basically, there's a lot that can be covered with regards to high school and homeschooling. I think there are a lot of different options available. And this is a great opportunity also to connect with one of the liaisons, because we have a number of options available actually through the province and other associations that offer high school students different opportunities. And so we like to share that with families so they have sort of everything available to them and can really make a decision depending on the student, on potential career paths they're looking at, maybe on post-secondary choices for studying that they're looking at. And so we have quite a bit of specific information that can be very helpful at the high school level to really help support the learning. But it's definitely something that is not only possible, but very successful. And students do go on to just kind of wonderful other options once they're done their homeschooling journey after grade 12.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that perfectly leads into the next question. What about post-secondary for homeschooling students? It is definitely possible. We have a lot of success stories about homeschooling students going that route who choose not to pursue credits or an official Manitoba high school diploma. They're still accepted into universities and colleges. Again, if you want more information on what that may look like for your student, please contact a liaison officer and also contact that post-secondary school as well in advance, just to ask what they would require of a homeschooling student. You can do it as early as grade 9, as late as grade 12, although I wouldn't recommend it wait till grade 12. Definitely check in every year because post-secondary institutions change their requirements on a yearly basis. But we can definitely, again, help with that process. And if you have any questions, please contact one of us here at the homeschooling office and we'd be happy to help.
All right, Gerald, that brings to an end the official presentation that we had for the MACHS audience tonight. I'd like to turn the screen back over to you. And I know that you wanted to follow up with questions and answers, and we very much look forward to that.
Thank you, Ellen, Michelle, Jasmine, and Peter for your participation and presentation here this evening. Just a comment. I want to go back to one particular comment that I saw on a slide that I think is very pertinent, and that was a slide that talked about it being a responsibility of parents to choose the educational materials, and it said a bit more than that, but basically it's saying that it's a responsibility of parents, and I want to thank you for recognizing that. I think it's an important thing. It's not, I think it's a privilege. It's a right of parents to be able to choose and direct the education of their children, including choosing the curriculum. And that's something that doesn't exist everywhere. And I think it's extremely important that parents can appropriately choose the type of curriculum that is best suited for their children. Because as each of you have talked about, and Chris particularly have talked about, that it's the ability to be able to choose a specific curriculum that may be different for each one of your children, that is tailored to their needs. And you talked about special needs and the things that were involved there. So many times a special need or a struggling learner is actually the reason why people started home education. It's not something to be ashamed of or to hide. It's the reason. And you are, because you can choose, you can take responsibility for choosing the best curriculum for each one of the children. You can then tailor it to be able to address those needs in a way that is very special. And I think that we don't want to take that for granted at all. And I just wanted to highlight that as something that I think is extremely important and is foundational to the ability and the strength of home education. Because if we can't choose, if we're not responsible, then we're simply participating in something that's not tailored. It's not specific. It's not designed to be able to address those needs in the way that they can best be met. And I think that's so important. I'd like to just take a bit of time to open it up and to say, let's, if there's questions or comments, we'd love to hear them. Either you can do that by turning on your video and your audio and asking those questions, or put them into the chat. We've had a lot of back and forth on the chat already, but we'd just like to open it up. Maybe I'll just, Larissa, is there any thoughts that you have after sort of sitting back and listening and seeing some of the chat? Any comments that we can kick it off with from your perspective?
I don't think so. There were little things, and each thing that seemed to come up, one of them covered in the course of it. So, yeah.
I have a question, if that's okay.
Please.
Okay. I have two, actually. I want to know, like, how often each subject. I have a 6-year-old who's turning 7, so she'll be going into grade 2 this year. That's what she would be doing in public school. And this is my first attempt at homeschooling. And I just want to know how often, like, each subject should be taught per week. Like, I noticed in her school that it wasn't every day that they were being taught each subject. So I'm just wondering if that's something different in homeschooling.
That's a
Who
good
would like
question.
to, yeah.
Our curriculum
okay.
Our curriculum covers everything every day, but I haven't always used that. I do make sure we do, like, learning to read, or if they've already finished phonics, then practice reading, like reading independently as well as aloud to me every day, and some kind of writing. It may not be language arts, it might be in their science or social studies, but some kind of writing each day, and some kind of math. Those skill-based ones we work on every day. Social studies and science, we've varied it. Sometimes we do it all the time. Sometimes we do 2 days a week, and it really depends. If you do a whole weekend out in nature, or if you do some crazy experiment at home, then you don't necessarily need to be right back at it the next day. Yeah, there's a lot of flexibility.
I'm going to refer back to a comment that you made, Ellen, in response in pulling out a piece of this question. And that was your definition of what equivalency was not. It was not being the exact copy of, or it doesn't have to look exactly the same.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think too, I just wanted to add to that because we get this question fairly often. Parents are trying to figure out what's an appropriate time frame, or how much time can I dedicate, and that kind of thing. And it's not going to look like the structure within a public school, because you have to remember that, a public school day, which is about 6.5 hours of instructional time, is filled with, classroom management and transition from, like, the classroom to the washroom and the water fountain and then the gym. And, like, there's all of this sort of extra time used for other, right? So usually a homeschool family will accomplish the learning in a more condensed time frame. I would say they get it done quicker than you
Yeah.
might see in the school setting.
Okay,
And,
that was my
you
next
know,
question.
Michelle,
So you did good. Thanks, Michelle.
both Michelle's. I'm going to also add in there that there's a difference between formal academics and the learning that you do as a homeschooler. So by the time we sit down for our formal academics, for me to read a story, for them to read to me, to do some math and some writing, we may already have discussed the state of the world and like 3 different math problems just in matching socks and getting ready in the morning, and how many plates do you need on the table if there's already 2 and 5 of us are going to eat breakfast.
Okay.
And so it's not just how much time do you sit down and do school, but how much learning happens through the course of the day.
Throughout the day.
They go
Yeah.
outside and play, and they're not just doing gross motor, but maybe they're doing fine motor. Maybe they're learning science because they just saw a new bug they'd never seen before. Maybe they just found out that bug eats that bug or whatever. Like my kid's playing with salamanders right now, but that's part of his science, right? Then we look it up and we say, okay, so what kind of salamander is that in Manitoba? Well, there's 3 different kinds, and which one was it? And so that wasn't part of his school day,
Okay.
but it's
But
part
it's
of his
still learning.
academics, it's part of what he
So
learned.
just
Yeah.
learning throughout the day.
And-
Okay,
and-
I like that.
Learning to
Yeah.
recognize that and put what they're learning in everyday activities into like education speak was a huge part of my learning curve when my oldest kids were little. And when you sit down and go, okay, they're playing with blocks, but that's not just fine motor skills, but it's social skills and it's physics because they're learning about gravity and all those things. It really
Yeah.
helps to realize that, okay, we might have only spent half an hour at the table, but they've had a full day of school.
I love
Well,
that. Okay,
and
awesome.
it ends up being as well those conversations at the dinner table that you're having. I know I've got a 20-year-old son who's on the autism spectrum, but he's a voracious reader. And whenever we're sitting and eating and we're discussing some aspect of politics that are happening in the world, such as one day he said to me, he said, "Dad, did you know that Afghanistan is considered to be the graveyard of empires?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "There are some reasons for that, but I'm not going to naturally just tell you that. How about if you do a little bit of research and next meal, we'll talk about it again?" Well, by the time the next meal came along the next day, he had done enough reading that he could tell me why that country is known as the graveyard of empires. Is that learning? Absolutely. Was it intentional on my part? Absolutely. Did it look like school? No. You know, it's part of the way we live, and we just interact with one another.
One of the pieces of advice that I've passed along to homeschool families in a number of places is trying to distinguish the difference between education and schooling. I don't actually like the term homeschooling. If I could change it, now it's so pervasive, it's almost impossible. But in a lot of parts of the world, it's not. In Eastern Europe, they call it family education. The challenge that I see is that many times, and ourselves when we started, we tried to run a school in our home. We started with desks,
Yes.
and they didn't last very long because they're not needed. They don't really fit, and they kind of get in the way. And I think that, Ellen, your comment of it doesn't have to look the same and it doesn't have to be exactly the same.
That's right.
It's really important. Don't try to run a school in your home. Work on educating your children, because educating, as some people that were a whole lot smarter than me, like Einstein said, schooling or education has very little to do with schooling.
Yeah, okay, awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate hearing that.
Yeah.
Because that's what I was trying to do. I was like thinking how am I going to set it up like a school. So hearing it the way that you're saying it makes sense.
I'm not doing this to criticize the school system at all.
No,
No, not at all.
No.
Not at all.
And
No.
sometimes we just need a place to start from.
And
It
really
changes
what-
over time.
Yeah.
And
And
you
really
don't
what
want
you,
to, yeah,
Go
you don't
ahead,
want
Bev.
to destroy your child's joy in learning. And if you sit at the table for 4 hours straight with a preschool, with a grade 1 or 2 student, you will destroy their desire to learn. 20 minutes.
Well,
max.
that's what school
And then
was
you go
doing to
back,
her.
play, and then you go 20 minutes again. So you pace it out.
Yeah, public
But-
school was doing that for her. It was destroying her learning. She hated it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So don't be
So-
afraid to do it differently.
No,
Okay.
that's right. Because what you want in the end is you want that lifelong learner. You want that person like my son who's on the autism spectrum to want to read voraciously and learn new things because of a love of learning. And and that's how I know that I've gotten somewhere with him, because of the amount of reading he does and what he shares with me. And it's turned into a lifelong learning. And when I say to him, you know, I need to know something, can you look that up? I no longer even have to give him search parameters to look for that online. He knows how to search online really, really well. So again, it's giving them the tools so that they can acquire the information that they want, that they can develop the new skills, and they've got the confidence to work at that. And that's really what you want out of your students, because that will equip them for life, because that's what you want.
Yeah.
You want them to be successful and independent and able in life.
Be able to figure everything out. Yeah, I
Yeah.
like that. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Are there other questions that anybody has? Just wanted to point out while you're thinking that this session is recorded. So if your friends or others that that you know of want to see it, it will be available on the MACHS website to be able to catch up and to watch later. So it'll be there.
I have one
And,
more question.
And
Sorry.
just before you jump in with that, Larissa in the chat, for those of you maybe that haven't seen it, did provide links to the Westman Connection chat group, as well as the MACHS discussion group.
You can ask questions there. There's always somebody moderating it.
Okay, awesome. Now I forget my question. Oh, that's okay. Oh, it'll come back to me in a second. Hold on. I'm going to be quiet for a minute.
There was a question in the chat that I saw pop up, and it had then it kind of went away. And the question was, how do you incorporate the Christian aspect into the curriculum, or are there guidelines? As a province, we do not provide any guidelines related to that. There are a number of Christian curricula that parents may choose from. They may wish to incorporate their own aspects as related to their faith group that they worship with, in regards to promoting certain Christian values throughout the curricula. It's really a very individual thing with the families, and there's no way the province would want to say, well, you've got to do it this way or you've got to do it that way. We trust that parents are going to do, again, that research, because I know I had a situation last fall where a father insisted that I give him a program for his 8-year-old daughter. And after the 4th phone call where he hounded me, I finally did recommend some materials, but honestly, I virtually hated myself for it, because I broke a tenet that I really strongly believe in, which we mentioned before, Gerald, that the parents really need to make that decision.
Yeah.
And as a liaison, I really did not like making that decision. He finally left happy, and I was really disgruntled that he left happy, that I gave him what he wanted, when what I really wanted him to do was to make some decisions for himself.
Yeah.
I'll just respond to that question briefly, and I appreciate your comments, Ellen, and that freedom to be able to choose appropriately is so important. In terms of incorporating Christian aspect, a lot of materials, I don't think that there's necessarily Christian math and unchristian math. I think that there's content in some curriculums that may not fit with a worldview or a set of beliefs that a family has, and it's important that you know what the worldview and the material is that you're choosing. And I think a lot of times it's just a matter of talking about your beliefs and talking about what it is that you value. whether that be a Christian value, whether that be just a value that your family has, to be able to talk about that and incorporate that, the respect, the love, the caring, to be able to incorporate those things. And I, yes, there are some excellent materials on going through teaching the Bible, on teaching apologetics, on teaching the things of character and what we believe. There's some excellent materials, and you'll find a lot of information on that on the MACHS website. But I think the biggest thing is that your children are watching you all the time. And you're teaching your children, and you are incorporating Christian values or values into everything that you teach, no matter whether you have it as a specific curriculum or not. And our children are sponges, and they are watching what we do, how we say it, how we react to others. And we can say we believe this or we believe that, but they will see what we actually are living. And so it's like so many other things. Yes, there's curriculum, and then there's life. And it becomes important to realize that we're teaching through life, not just in the practical things like carpentry and measurements, but also in the way that we relate and interrelate and communicate.
And just to add to that, Gerald, for those of you that don't know, I used to work at a Christian school, and we had to incorporate biblical principles into all of our lessons. Now, there was no Manitoba curriculum, there's no guidelines on how to do that. So as teachers, we were faced with the task with creating that ourselves. So just like what Gerald said, incorporating into your daily life, but also you can incorporate it into your subjects and into your topics as well. Because, if you're studying language arts and you're studying poetry, we'll take out the book of Psalms. Let's take a look at some sonnets that David wrote. Let's analyze that as part of our poetry unit. Or if you're doing a cooking class, home ec class, let's take a look at what David did and his diet. Let's compare that. How does that diet look like to what we have now? Why would he be stronger then, and not the other ones who ate the meat? So you can have some really good conversations that way. Still incorporate those biblical principles. Even in math, for the younger kids all the way to the older kids, you can talk about Noah's Ark and the calculations that had to take place. You can talk about the galaxy and science, and talk about how the earth was created. There's so many different aspects that can be pulled into your daily lessons, and they can be intentional, or they can just be based out of conversation. But it's definitely possible. But sometimes if you want to make those real lasting impressions, sometimes you may have to be just a little intentional and, hey, you know what, we're going to talk about this specifically today because I want to make sure that my kid gets that. So just some ideas.
And as a Christian homeschooler, looking at the resources that are out there, I sort of see four categories available. There are those that are anti-Christian that you want, that I try to avoid completely. That doesn't mean we wouldn't ever look at it and talk about it, but it's not what I'm going to use as my core curriculum. Then there are those that are secular curricula, and I make use of a lot of those. We use a lot of books that aren't necessarily written from a Christian worldview, but we'll talk about them, and like everyone's been mentioning, add in our values to it. And then there are Christian curricula where they're teaching you about God and about God's word. But then there's also a fourth category, and that's one that I've chosen, and I love having it because then I don't always have to be thinking every day about, okay, how can I turn this around to talk about God? And that's a curriculum that comes from a Christian worldview. And so there are curricula out there that are set to teach about science from a Christian worldview, from a creationist worldview. There are there are curricula out there that teach history from a biblical worldview. So the Bible history is taught throughout history. So when you're learning about the Chinese, you're also learning about the Egyptians, and you're learning about Israel. And so I've made use of all four of those in different ways, but just be aware that there are things out there to help you pull those things in if that feels beyond what you're capable of at any given moment.
So my first step now would be like tomorrow to send the notification form in. And do I have to wait for anything to come back before I get started, or?
No.
Oh,
Start
okay.
right away,
Like,
or start
everybody.
whenever.
Okay.
And I'm going to jump in just a little bit. It is called a notification form for a very powerful reason. Back in the year 2000, the government actually wanted to call it a registration form. And a registration form indicates that we're asking permission to
Yeah.
homeschool. And we're notifying the government. We know that we have a responsibility to show equivalency, and there's a process to do that. And that process is something that we respect, and we think it's one that works well. But it's not one where we have to sit back and not do anything until we get permission. And so I know that it's a kind of a little bit of a ticklish subject in terms of how we do that, but it is a notification, and it's an important one. So
perfect.
And
when
that
you-
said, when you do get notification or get a letter from the province, you can just snap a picture of this, keep it on your phone, or take a copy of it with you. I suggest putting the original in your file, but you can take a copy or a picture of it, and you can get discounts at places like Kohl's, Staples, even Ricky's for clothes. Sometimes they have teacher appreciation days.
That's awesome.
Sometimes museums. Pretty much any education place like Scholar's Choice, they all have teacher programs. And so as a homeschooler, you qualify for those.
Awesome.
There's a
And
group
do-
discount
do,
at the zoo.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, and a group could be just your family, but they have changed the rules with COVID, so I'm not sure what they are now.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
and do maintain or retain your confirmation of notification letter, because it is a legal document. And every once in a while, Revenue Canada, CRA, decides it's going to audit families in regards to the child tax benefit. It has nothing to do with us, but they want to know whether your child has been registered in an educational program if they're school age. And so that notification form, or that not notification form, that confirmation notification letter is a legal document indicating the province has recognized you for the school year stated on the letter, confirmation letter, that you are a homeschooling family, and that you're operating a homeschool under the recognition of the province. So it's a legal document. And we often have families who get it in the mail, they look at it, and at one point in time in the past, there's a little card on the bottom. Well, they cut that card off, put it in their wallet, and the rest of the letter they threw away. So we actually stopped issuing the card to hopefully ensure families wouldn't throw the letter away. I think that helped to a degree, but we still get calls all the time. Do you have a copy of my confirmation letter? Yes, we do. But at the same time, they really, some parents really are a little worried until they get that new copy that they're going to get something they need for CRA.
Okay.
I actually wanted to add, with regards to the distinction between registration and notification, parents register for school. And when they register for school, they agree to give over to the school the authority of the parent while the student is at school, in a sense, right?
Correct.
Because the teacher and the school staff and principal will act in lieu of the parent. But when you notify for homeschooling, you're indicating very clearly that you remain responsible with regards to the education of your child. And so I think that's an important distinction as well. Yeah, with regards to the word registration and notification.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
So our time is getting on, and it's been a great evening. Are there any other questions that anybody has? I know I started out by saying Manitoba was special in that we were, homeschooling has always been legal in Manitoba, and we don't take that for granted. It's also special in that I don't know of any other place in Canada. I don't know of any other place in North America. I actually don't know of any other place in the world where a homeschool organization like ours will do a call like this, a meeting like this with Manitoba education officials, where we together present a process and have a discussion where we can say, we don't always necessarily agree 100% on everything, and that's okay. But we recognize that it's up to parents. It is a parental right and responsibility to do this, and that this process recognizes that and it supports it. And in that way, Manitoba is very special, and I'm very thankful to be in Manitoba, and I'm very thankful for our team in Manitoba education, in recognizing that and in working together with us on ensuring that this can work and it works well. So Alan, Jasmine, Michelle, and Peter, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gerald, for the
Yes, thank
opportunity
you.
again to be with you. I can very much say we look forward to these evenings, and I was delighted when I got your email related to doing this session on student notification, because we had done 2 others before, and again, for us, it's important to be able to talk to parents, to families, and no better way to do it than through an organization that provides a level of support to families that really ensures they've always got a place to turn, no matter what the question may be. And I just like to say thank you to you, Gerald, and extend my sincere thanks to all of MACHS for the opportunity that you've given us.
Thank you, Ellen. And Larissa, I want to thank you as well for your participation and sharing of your story and your experience.
Thanks for inviting me. I always enjoy it, and I'm honored to be asked. Thank you so much.
And I certainly hope that we are going to get back to a point where we'll have those in-person conferences that I very much used to enjoy attending, and Larissa coming out to Brandon and visiting with the Westman Homeschool Connection folks. I've just missed that, and I hope that all the way around we'll be able to do that again sooner than later.
So for those of you that missed the homeschool conference that MACHS puts on every spring, we did do one online. It is recorded. It is available on our website, and we are definitely planning, Lord willing, on having a conference in March of 2022. We have a speaker, Jay Wiley, that has been reserved. The hotel is booked, and we actually have a new conference coordinator who started homeschooling in Manitoba, went to Saskatchewan for a bit, and now has done her homeschool journey, is back in Manitoba. And Linda Karn is taking over the organization of the MACHS conference for 2022, and we're excited by being able to offer that. So that'll be at the end of March in 2022 at this point at the Victoria Inn is what we've got. We've got everything reserved.
What are the
Because you've
dates?
outgrown your other venue, right, Gerald?
It's the end of March. I
Yeah.
can't. I don't remember the dates right off, Larissa. I can't. And it's behind my screen here to be able to look it up right now. But we'll get them out.
Very good.
So thank you all. And if you have questions on an ongoing basis, certainly you can talk to the Manitoba Education Liaisons, but feel free to participate in the Facebook groups, be that Westband or be that the MACHS Facebook group, or just send MACHS an email at info@matches.ca. That's the one that Bev and I see, and we'd be glad to be able to connect people with folks in their own area. So all the best. I am so convinced that it works well, and that you can do it. And we would just we wish you the best, and have a great start to home education. And we'll be doing some more of these seminars throughout the fall. So thank you all.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Bye.
very much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, Al.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good evening to everybody. Take care now. Be well.